Picture a freezing European winter, icy wind cutting across an open valley. And now, take away the fire. No flames, no coals, no warm smoke. That sounds impossible to survive. But for a huge stretch of human history, that was reality. Long before anyone controlled fire on a daily basis, early humans and their relatives were already living in cold places. Somehow, they made it through. Not with flame, but with the body, behavior, and shelter. So how does anyone survive a freezing world with no fire? That's exactly what we're covering in this video. First, a quick and important clarification. Humans didn't invent fire the day they needed it most. The story of fire is long, messy, and gradual. Some evidence suggests occasional fire use going back over 1 million years, but that early evidence is debated and likely wasn't regular use. Much of it may simply be leftover wildfire, not deliberate fire-making. Most researchers agree on something else, though. Hominins moved into cold parts of Europe before fire was used habitually. Everyday, reliable fire use likely only became common around 300,000 to 400,000 years ago. That leaves a long stretch of time before that point, where cold climate survival depended on something other than flame. That's the part of the story most people never hear, and it's honestly one of the most impressive survival stories there is. Before any tool or shelter, the body itself did a lot of the work. Some early cold-adapted hominins, like Neanderthals, had noticeably stocky, compact builds. Shorter limbs and a wider torso hold on to heat more efficiently. There's simply less surface area for warmth to escape from. A larger nose and wider nasal passages likely help too. Cold air could be warmed slightly before ever reaching the lungs. None of this made anyone immune to the cold, but it gave a real physical head start. Body fat mattered enormously as well. A layer of fat under the skin acts as natural insulation, slowing down how quickly heat escapes the body. Keeping enough fat on the body through a cold season was a constant priority, which is exactly why diet played such a big role in staying warm. In freezing conditions, food wasn't just about hunger, it was about fuel for staying warm. Fat-rich foods were especially valuable. Animal fat provides far more energy ounce for ounce than lean meat, and that energy converts directly into body heat. Bone marrow was another prized source of fat and calories. Cracked open with simple stone tools, marrow was rich, dense, and worth the effort to extract. Larger, fattier animals were often specifically targeted during colder months because their fat reserves were higher going into winter. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a deliberate strategy, learned and repeated every year. Eating well in the cold wasn't a luxury, it was a direct, practical survival tool. Shelter mattered just as much as diet, but without fire, shelter had to work a little differently. Caves and rock shelters offered something valuable all on their own: protection from wind. Wind chill can make cold air feel far more dangerous than the temperature alone, so simply blocking the wind made an enormous difference. Deep caves also stay at a fairly stable temperature year-round. Even without any fire, a deep cave is often warmer than the open air in winter. Choosing the right shelter location took real knowledge of the landscape. South-facing rock walls, for example, absorbed more sunlight during the day and released a little of that warmth slowly through the night. In places without natural rock shelters, people dug into the ground. Shallow pits or dugouts blocked wind and trapped a little body heat, sometimes lined with dry grass, moss, or leaves for extra insulation. Dry plant material trapped pockets of air, which helped hold in warmth. It's the same basic principle behind modern insulation. Staying dry mattered just as much as staying warm. Wet skin in wet clothing lose heat far faster than dry ones. A cold, wet day was genuinely more dangerous than a cold, dry one. So finding shelter before rain or wet snow arrived was a priority. Reading the sky and clouds became an important survival skill. If hides or coverings did get wet, they were dried as best as possible, wrung out by hand, or laid flat in whatever sunlight was available. Without fire to speed up the process, this took patience, but it was necessary, especially before a cold night ahead. One of the simplest tools against the cold was other people. Sleeping in a group meant sharing body heat. A single body loses heat quickly in the open cold, but a tight group of bodies loses heat much slower. This is a strategy many animals still use today, huddling together in tight clusters to conserve warmth. Early humans likely did something very similar. Children slept closest to adults, where body heat was most concentrated. This wasn't just comfort, it was a real safeguard against the cold. A group also meant shared coverings could go further. One large hide could cover several people at once, rather than each person needing separate full coverage on their own. Staying active also helped generate warmth. Muscles produce heat when they're working, so staying in motion during the coldest parts of the day made sense. Tasks like gathering, hunting, or building were often timed carefully, done during the warmer daylight hours whenever possible, while the coldest hours, especially early morning and night, were spent resting and sheltering. This rhythm helped conserve energy when it mattered most, rather than burning through limited fat unnecessarily. Here's something surprising that researchers are still debating. Some scientists have proposed that certain hominins may have slowed down dramatically during winter, something similar to a hibernation-like state. This idea comes from bones at a site called Cima de los Huesos in Spain. Some of the bones show damage similar to conditions linked with prolonged inactivity. The idea is that slowing the body down could have helped stretch out limited winter food. It's an interesting idea, but it's far from settled. Many researchers remain skeptical, and more evidence is needed. Even so, it's a reminder of just how extreme these winters really were. Extreme enough that researchers are still exploring every possible survival strategy. Clothing existed in some form long before fine sewing needles came along. Simple, draped hides provided real protection, even without tailoring. A hide wrapped and tied around the body blocked wind and added a layer of insulation over the skin. Evidence for the use of hides for warmth goes back tens of thousands of years, based on bone tools found alongside early hide-working evidence. These early hides weren't stitched into fitted shapes yet, but even a loose hide was far better than bare skin in the cold. Fur side in kept the warmest layer close to the body. Fur side out could help shed snow and rain more easily. Different situations likely called for different choices. Larger hides could double as ground coverings or bedding at night. One resource used in more than one way. Over time, all of these strategies were pushed to their limits. Body fat, shelter, group warmth, and hides could only do so much. As hominins pushed into colder and colder environments, these older strategies eventually needed a powerful new addition. Fire likely started as something people simply encountered, a wildfire sparked by lightning, or a smoldering log left behind. Learning to keep a flame going was likely the first real step, long before learning to create fire completely from scratch. This transition happened gradually and likely at different times in different places. Once regular fire use finally took hold, it didn't replace everything that came before it. It simply added one more powerful tool to a system that already worked. So how did early humans stay warm without fire? The honest answer is they used almost everything else they had. A body built and fed for cold conditions, shelter chosen carefully to block wind and hold in warmth, group willing to share warmth, space, and coverings, hides that turned bare skin into something far better protected, and careful timing of when to work and when to rest. None of it was as simple or as effective as fire would eventually become, but it worked for a very, very long time. Long enough for early humans to spread into some of the coldest places on Earth, long before a single flame ever helped them do it. If you enjoyed this one, there's a lot more ancient history where this came from. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next, and I'll see you in the next video.